Version 13.0.1 marks the end of any future changes to Smash Ultimate as we know it. There'll probably be another update or two beyond this point, but there's a high likelihood it will be exclusively for bug fixes and patching exploits. Having said that, Ultimate might very well be the most balanced of the 5 Smash titles, which is a huge accomplishment given that the roster is just shy of 90 playable characters. Despite being well into its 4th year since release, the game is far from being fully explored, and I'm betting that it's going to take another 4 more years at the very least before players truly understand where the relative placement of every fighter will be on the tier list. To this day, we're seeing players take sets off of even the best of the best using characters widely thought of to be low tier. In my eyes, that only serves as a testament that the gap between the best and worst character is noticeably narrower than any of the franchise's previous iterations, which were known for only a handful being viable while the rest were forever relegated to casual play. All the same, I still think there are a good number of characters who could have used just a little bit more love, so today I want to run down the 5 that I think are most deserving of buffs if Nintendo ever decides to release version 14. Keep in mind that just because a fighter isn't on this list doesn't mean they don't need buffs. These are just the 5 that I believe will be really interesting to see compete at a high level if only they didn't have the very flaws that they did. At the end of this video, feel free to share your own 5 characters and what buffs you'd give them. Before I do so, let me first establish my point of view. While I firmly commend Sakudai's team for making all of the game's roster as viable as possible, I will say that the approach they took to balance changes demonstrates a rather lack of understanding in terms of what makes someone competitively good or bad. Granted, by their own words, Smash Bros is not a competitive game first and foremost, as much as it burns my tongue to say it. So for all intents and purposes, any balance changes for the competitive scene is better than none at all. Going off of that, my goal for this video is to locate each character's most egregious issues and try to mend them in such a way that doesn't blatantly make them top tier through brute force, meaning I'm not going to do something like give Kirby the airspeed of Jigglypuff, the weight of Bowser, and the kill power of Ganondorf, because at that point we can make any character tier 0. Instead, I want to propose changes that are only meaningful if the character is piloted by someone who's already well versed in their ins and outs. So in other words, the player would have to be good at the character, and by extension the game, in order to utilize these buffs to their optimal level, although I will still include a couple feel-good buffs. First on the list, we're going to talk about Mewtwo. Being reintroduced to the game back in Smash 4 as DLC, he was widely considered a top tier due to that game heavily rewarding characters with his attributes. As a result, he was nerfed during his transition to Ultimate, giving him an additional hurt box on his tail, which simultaneously reduced the disjointed range of his tail-based attacks and made his already large hurt box even larger. Universal systems changes in Ultimate, such as the inability to spam air dodge, further exacerbated his poor endurance. All in all, his glass cannon nature was doubled down onto an extreme level, enough to the point where most of his assets are nullified by its flaws. Fortunately, Mewtwo did receive some of the largest number of buffs throughout the game's lifespan. Patch 3, 4, 7, 8, and 13 sought to make it more rewarding for players who were adroit with his various tools. And while these were significant enough to bump him out of low tier and into mid tier, players aren't exactly eager to drop their current mains in favor of trying him out. So in response to that, I have 4 buffs in mind. Obviously, we should first remove the hurt box on his tail. I get that thematically it makes sense as the tail is a part of him and he will likely suffer pain from any injury sustained by that tail, but there really is no reason for him to have one, seeing as there are plenty of other characters with tails in this game, and none of them share the same trait. Moreover, his hurt box is large enough as is, especially when you consider his light weight. Since many of his best spacing tools like up air, back air, forward tilt, down tilt, and up tilt all utilize his tail, it essentially punishes players for using those attacks and defeats the purpose of using them to space against opponents. Next change I want to give is to his teleport. Mewtwo's disadvantage state is pretty bad in light of how big he is, and the fact that he can only air dodge once now, which was his main way to escape combos. Teleport already has intangibility from frame 9 to 19, but having that intangibility start up much earlier, such as frame 4 or even 3, will make him less vulnerable to untrue combos. This is also due to the fact that he lacks a frame 1 double jump similarly to Ness. So those are the 2 big changes I want to give to him. Then I have 2 small quality of life buffs. The first is to increase the hit stun on Confusion at higher percentages to allow him to combo into kill moves like forward air or up air more easily. The second is to make Shadow Ball's fully charged version big enough to consistently 2-frame at the ledge. Technically it already does, but due to its animation bobbing up and down, it actually can miss timing. This is the only charge shot-esque projectile that does this to my knowledge, so it would be nice if it was changed to be in line with everyone else's. Pit and Dark Pit are up next. Ever since Brawl, they've been regarded by many as average characters. Not bad, but not great either. I share the same sentiment. They're a jack of all trades, master of none, so essentially it means that a lot of characters are able to outperform them in some way, shape, or form, which is why almost no one plays them. By all accounts, unremarkable. Average damage output, average frame data, average mobility, average combo game, average advantage state, disadvantage state, etc. Sadly, that doesn't mean they don't have weaknesses. Both Pit and Dark Pit notoriously struggle with closing out stocks. Any attack that can do so is often very committal and by consequence, risky to use, especially in lost stock lasted situations. They do have a few other weaknesses like subpar air physics and middling range, but among those, kill pressure is the most crippling. With that in mind, we should first address the elephant in the room, their abhorrently bad hitboxes. First things first, their neutral and up air should be granted fully connecting hitboxes. What I mean by this is to make the entire attack animation one giant cohesive hitbox as opposed to smaller ones. The easiest way to explain this is by comparing Pit Snare to Palutena's. You'll notice hers more or less covers her entire hitbox throughout the attack, while Pit Snare has a myriad of blind spots you can break through, most notably his legs. Up air is the same as well. Palutena's up air has more thorough coverage of the entire area above her, while Pit's doesn't. I understand those two attacks are not exactly the same, but most of Pit's and Dark Pit's attack ranges don't even match their animations. Second, let's work on their up tilt, as it suffers from Falco up smash syndrome where the first and second hits target two completely different areas, making it extremely easy to fall out of by accident. I also recommend giving it much lower knockback scaling so it can reliably combo into up air at higher percentages, giving them access to another kill setup besides down air into up smash. Third, widen their forward air hitbox. It doesn't even stretch the entire length of their bows. Despite looking like it should have really good disjointed range, it's only about the same length as any kick-based forward air like Diddy Kong or Inkling. Also, granting it better knockback scaling would help out with edge guarding, allowing them to secure kills more reliably after sending opponents off stage. Fourth, add a scoop hitbox to both sides of up smash. With frame 6 startup, Pit and Dark Pit are tied with, I believe, Charizard for the fastest up smash in the game. Unlike Charizard, however, theirs is a lot less reliable to use out of shield due to where the hitboxes are positioned. Having a scoop on both sides would make opponents think twice about recklessly attacking their shield. And for the last one, I thought it would be a nice touch to give their forward tilt better kill power. In exchange for all these buffs, however, Guardian Orbiter should have more ending lag. It's a little too safe to use, especially in the air, as it's effectively a shield that you can use off the ground, and the low end lag makes it very spammable. Making their down B less abusable is, in my opinion, a worthwhile trade-off for better offensive pressure. Wii Fit Trainer shares much of the same attributes as the Pit clones, where they're jack of all trades, master of none. Thanks to Sun Salutation and Header, they have a respectable projectile game, and their brawling capabilities are nothing to scoff at, especially with deep breathing. The problem is, they're a little too reliant on deep breathing to close on stocks, because anything with remotely decent kill power without it is either too laggy or too short range to work as a straight hit. In addition to this, a lot of their would-be kill moves, such as forward tilt and back air, are too restrictive, so I'm going about this in two ways. Making their normals a little better while making deep breathing more accessible since it's such an integral part of their kit. Starting with their smash attacks. In a similar fashion to Pit, their up smash is pretty fast all things considered, but it's virtually unusable out of shield due to lacking a scoop hitbox. Kind of weird because it seems like it should. I made the startup one frame faster just to account for frame 10 consisting of the would-be hitboxes. Down smash is also heavily overshadowed by their down tilt, having roughly the same purpose. While it obviously has more launch power than down tilt, it's nowhere near the same speed, and also for some reason it does less damage. So I propose we make it start up at frame 14, which means it's fast enough to use in reaction for ledge traps. Next change is to give forward air an actual funnel hitbox. Forward airs are generally supposed to be spacing tools, but Wii Fit's Fair is incapable of doing so because it strikes diagonally above them, preventing any hopes of you using this as a landing aerial. I understand that the hitboxes are in accordance with the animation, but in practice, this move needs to have more generous hitboxes, at least to hit shorter characters. Back air is extremely fast and can be potentially strong out of shield against enemies behind them, but only one of its active frames has the strong hit, which lowers its usability for, once again, landing attacks. Frames 5 through 7 should consist of the strong hit, while the remaining frames 8 through 11 should be the weak one. Finally, making deep breathing faster to channel on successive uses will give Wii Fit Trainer a bit more uptime in combat. A lot of players tend to camp with Header simply to buy them time for the internal cooldown to pass in order to get more uses of deep breathing. This would reduce the need to do so to some extent. Now, for the past 3 I talked about so far, they've all been graded in the low to mid tier levels, so many of you might be confused as to why I put Inkling here. It's mostly due to the fact that no one plays them, and the main reason being is that they have everything you would want from a solid main, except for one. They have fast movement on the ground and in the air, solid frame data that allows for low percentage combos, serviceable recovery, 2 very good tools in the neutral game, and decent grappling. So what's the missing thing? 2 words: kill power. True, Inkling does have ways to clap some cheeks like up throw into up air or more notably roller setups, however both are extremely telegraphed and inconsistent, and Inkling faces very stiff competition in terms of playstyle. Rushdown, which houses a large portion of top tier characters like Roy, Wolf, Mythra, Fox, Pikachu, and so on, but that doesn't mean they can't make a name for themselves, they just need a bit more help. What I want to do first is take their most reliable neutral tool, their back air, and give it new properties. Since it lasts for 5 frames, I want to divide those up by making the first 2 frames a strong hit and the remaining frames a weak hit. The weak hit will have the same damage and knockback as the sour spot of the current back air, and the strong hit will have higher knockback scaling to the point where unscaled it kills around 140% of the ledge. Still rather high, but we don't want to make this move any more broken than it already is. Next, down tilt and back throw should have better knockback scaling. Inkling's best offensive asset is arguably how good their ledge trapping is by virtue of Splat Grenade, but not as threatening as the likes of Cloud, Snake, Steve and such. Giving down tilt and back throw more kill power will allow them more reliable pressure once they throw their opponent off stage. Finally, down smash should have slightly bigger hitboxes vertically to allow for better 2-framing. It can 2-frame, but the hitboxes are not all that generous, especially the strong hit. This can also help out with mix-ups by discouraging their opponents from ledge hanging. For these buffs, one thing will be nerfed, the berry time of their roller. It's a little too good for how easy it is to get hit by, and yes, I'm aware it's a very important part of their kit, but in fairness, that's only because it's the only way they can get easy kill setups past up their up air percentages. So basically, we're reallocating the power budget around. And now we arrive at Corrin. I know that MKLeo has started to brandish them to throw people off as seen in Delfino Mazzaretta, but ever since the transition from Smash 4 to Ultimate, they've been widely acknowledged as one of the weaker swordies in the game. Like Mewtwo, they have been given a multitude of buffs in versions 2, 3, 4, 7, and 8, but they're still just under the cusp of seeing more recognition, so I want to nudge them along a little bit more. The first buff is a bit ambiguous, but I think they should get a little more ground speed. Corrin's ground and air physics are among the worst in the game. This is somewhat remedied by their side B Dragon Lunge and back air, both of which can quickly reposition them from wherever they are, but it's the thing holding them back the most. Taking into consideration their ridiculously good coverage even for a sword character, we're gonna keep their airspeed the same but give them slightly better ground movement. How much? I'm not sure, but they do need that to keep up with the top tier and high tier characters. Next, we should address their dash attack, possibly one of the worst dash attacks in the game. It's laggy, really unsafe on shield, and it barely sends opponents anywhere. Corrin already struggles to approach in light of their poor mobility, so I propose that we make dash attacks slightly safer on shield. At the moment, it's minus 22 frames, perhaps lower to minus 14 or 15. It's still very punishable, most characters can up smash out of shield, but it's at least something. And similarly to Wii Fit Trainer, I want to give Corrin's back air one more strong hit frame as the strong hit is only 1 frame, just to make it more consistent as a safe attack in last stock last hit scenarios. To wrap it up, a hitbox on Corrin's head during their up B. Contrary to what the animation might make you think, they have no hitbox on the top of the attack, making them incredibly easy to spike with any mid to long range down air such as Cloud, Pyra, Ganondorf, Arsene Joker, what have you. Their vertical distance is not very good to begin with, so having a bit more safety is somewhat necessary. It doesn't have to be a big hitbox, their recovery should still be exploitable, but not mind-numbingly so. Alrighty, so that's it for the 5 characters I think should be buffed and how they should be buffed. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree or disagree with my choices. I elected to go with Mewtwo, Wii Fit, Corrin, Inkling, and the Pits, because those 5 to me are ever so close to being respectable contenders if only they had a bit more. I could have talked about the likes of Villager, Ice Climbers, Bowser Jr. and so on, but frankly speaking, even if we were to give them more buffs, they would still be unpopular, whereas these 5 I believe have the potential to see widespread use. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Consider following me on Twitter, joining my Discord server, we just expanded on the Smash Bros category if you're interested, and check out my tier list video if you want my thoughts on where everyone is ranked. But for now, thanks so much for watching and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.